The iPhone Air. So this thing just launched. Apple just announced this iPhone. News outlets are freaking out. Oh my god, all day battery life. That's not enough for all my days. One camera? How am I gonna take 3 pictures at once? Because that's how I take my photos. Oh my god, why did they make the iPhone Air so thin? A mono speaker? Okay, that one's pretty bad. So everyone in the tech scene is freaking out. But my real thought was, how usable is this iPhone? So I wanted to know the real iPhone Air experience. So this is the iPhone Air experience. So I recently took a trip to the US, and the only phone I brought on the entire trip was the iPhone Air. It was a long 12-day trip to the US that truly gave me the full experience of the iPhone because I had no other phone to rely on, and there were parts of the trip that were just long flights, long nights, and things that just made me rely on this phone entirely. So how was my entire experience with the iPhone Air? Well, let's talk about it. Also, by the way, this video is not to compare this phone with the iPhone 17 or the 17 Pros because we all know that the iPhone 17 is the best value this year, but this video is more about the experience of using an iPhone Air. So before my trip to the US, I actually made a list of concerns, including other people's concerns of the iPhone Air. You know, it's a pretty nice list. Added some flowers, justified it a little bit. So while I explain my trip, let's go through this list of concerns, starting with the battery life. So to start the entire trip off, I had to do a 30-hour commute to the US. It wasn't actually 30 hours, I spent 8 hours in Japan. I had to transit from Haneda to Narita. So during that 30-hour commute, how was the battery life? Well, yeah, it did well. So I started off the entire trip at the Singapore airport with about 80% in my phone. I went on the flight and landed. I spent a long time in Japan, like 6 hours, went Don Quixote. So I was actually on FaceTime the whole time I was inside with my phone, and it ran the battery down quite a bit. Honestly, I think it's more than enough to hit the airport and then charge it when we get on the plane. After lunch, I went onto the bus that took me to the other airport, which had a plug in it, so I recharged. After which I took a flight to Seattle, which also had a plug, so I could charge the whole time. Safe to say, while I was doing the entire commute, I never once had to think about battery life because I had opportunities to charge the entire time. So the iPhone for commuting, pretty good. Daily use while I was in the USA was even more interesting. I usually started my days at about 7 to 8 AM in the morning because of jet lag, and I'll end the day at about 9 to 10 PM at about 30 to 40% remaining. This is without charging throughout the entire day, by the way. I might be a pretty light user for my iPhone, but I don't actually game other than... But honestly, I was doing all my daily stuff and also the touristy stuff of like taking photos and exploring. So there was quite a lot of load on this phone. Also, I did bring along the Apple battery pack, the one that you actually snap behind your phone. And I gotta be honest with you, I never used it. Like, I literally didn't use this. So if you're not doing like 30-hour days a day, you kinda don't need this. Also, a side note, I've seen a lot of people complain about this being like, oh my god, why did you buy a thin phone? If you're gonna attach a big battery behind, it's gonna be a thick phone. So being a user of the iPhone Air without the actual battery at the back, all I have to say is you don't have to use this thing. Like, even if you wanted to use this thing, just use it when you need to. You don't have to have it at the back of your phone at all times. Like, you could just charge it in your bag, and days that you don't want to use it, you can just, you know, remove it because that's what it's meant to do. Look, that's like saying I don't have space in my pocket, so I'm gonna buy a backpack, but I can't take out this backpack anymore. I have to wear it in the shower. That was not worth this joke. So I'd say the all-day battery life actually is pretty much all day, and it's more than enough for me. So yeah, that concern is good. The single camera. Probably one of the biggest elephants in the room, and trust me, we have a few more big elephants to go through in the room. So at the back of the iPhone Air is a single 48 megapixel shooter. What you'll be missing out from their other phones like the 17 and the 17 Pro is the ultra-wide camera and the telephoto camera, one of which I actually miss quite a lot. One thing I realized about this phone is that with the front camera being a square sensor now, a lot of shots that I used to use the ultra-wide for, where I like take a selfie with a group of friends, is now replaced with the front camera because it's also pretty wide. But this is not an iPhone Air exclusive camera. It's actually available on all the other phones, so I'm not going to add this into like the benefits of an iPhone Air. But other than that, I actually do use the ultra-wide camera for a lot of B-roll shots for vlogs where I just like take video of the entire room. But yeah, I kind of miss the ultra-wide camera. But while using the single camera at the back, I would say it's livable. It is a sacrifice that you are going to have to make when you move to this iPhone. Not really the telephoto lens, because I don't really care about that one. I don't normally stalk people and like zoom in that far. It's pretty cool though. But I do miss the ultra-wide camera because I use that a lot for FaceTime. So it may look like I'm going to multiple locations, but I'm actually just rotating the camera around and getting different backgrounds. It's pretty cool. The durability. So we've all seen the bend test by now. This phone is basically indestructible, as some would say. That some would be me. But I didn't use this phone entirely caseless up till now and throughout the entire trip. The only thing I had was a screen protector from Magic John, you know, shout out to my guy John. And I'm a pretty careless person, right? I drop my phone every other day, and I love wrapping my new shiny iPhones with like a cheap $3 screen protector and a cheap $4 $100 case. But during the entire trip, I did use it caseless. So using it caseless for the first time was kind of weird to me, but it was actually really nice to use. Because of how thin it is, I think I dropped it even less than what I normally do. But let's see the overall damages of this phone. So I dropped it a total of 3 times in this trip. Once off the toilet bowl, I know, crazy, I was using my phone on the toilet. That incident caused this little scratch over here. Once more off a plane seat while I was sitting down. I keep dropping my phones when I'm sitting down, what am I doing? But that plane one was really bad because I dropped it and did like a whole 360 somersault into the seat crevice and like scratched the entire metal frame. Yeah, it did this tiny little ding here. It's a little scratch on the glass, so it wasn't even that bad. And then I dropped it a 3rd time, but I didn't actually do any damages. But putting this phone on rough surfaces and putting it into my pocket in and out non-stop throughout the entire trip, this phone held up phenomenally. So durability, good. The single speaker. It's getting late, there's a light above me now. So making the iPhone so thin came with a bunch of caveats, and one of which they couldn't fit a 2nd speaker at the bottom. If you look at the bottom of an iPhone Air, you actually see 2 speaker grills and they're just microphone grills. And this is probably the one thing on the list that I dread the most. Like everything else is great and the cameras are livable, but the single mono speaker on this iPhone is not great. When you turn up the phone's volume, anything above 50%, you can kind of hear this small little tinny distortion. And anything close to 100%, you hear like a really bad clipping distortion sound. I'm not a sound engineer, I don't really know what I'm saying. But if you do want to hear it yourself, you should go and try a demo iPhone. Using the single speaker for TikTok or Instagram, like vertical content, it's actually fine. The speaker's positioned in a way where it's actually pointed towards your ears when held vertically, so you don't actually notice that there's a speaker missing. But when you turn it around for landscape videos, like long form videos, it's immediately apparent that there's only sound coming from one side. If you use IEMs or AirPods or like even the headphones, you probably wouldn't really care because you're on that all the time. But if you consume content like me where I don't actually use my headphones, it kind of gets annoying when you're watching long videos. So is it usable? Yeah. Is it livable? Yeah. Only if you like watch vertical content. It's getting late, the sun is going down, I can't really see anymore. Overheating and power of the iPhone or something, I don't know what to call this part. The part where I talk about the chip. So on the flight to the US, I actually gamed quite a lot, so I was playing a lot of Star Rail. And let me tell you, the A19 Pro on this iPhone Air is no slouch. It's running games fine, like every game was running fine. It does get warm, but it never once went down to like a low FPS. I know there are a bunch of benchmarks and videos out there showing this phone throttling down to like really slow speeds because of the whole thermal thing. But those are really stressful benchmarks on the phone. You're never going to be mining Bitcoin on your phone, so why are you stressing it like that? Everyday real world use, I've never actually got it to slow down except when I was playing Star Rail and FaceTiming and sharing my screen all at the same time. So that's the only time it slows down. But like any other iPhone does that too, except probably the new 17 Pros. Those are really good. But my real world experience from using CapCut to like casual gaming for hours, it's honestly not a bad experience because I never once thought about it. Also, having the chip actually positioned at the top of the iPhone, it's pretty good because when you hold the phone, it doesn't actually heat up into your fingers, so you don't actually feel the heat unless you're holding it like this for gaming. So gaming and daily tasks on the iPhone Air is great. It's not just good, it's great. The build quality. So the whole point of the iPhone Air is how thin and light it is. And the craziest part is I actually enjoyed this the most of this iPhone Air. The handling of this iPhone, the way that it kind of just disappears into your pocket, it's kind of so bizarre that it's something that you have to try it out for yourself. There were multiple times on this trip, and I emphasize on multiple, where I'll have this phone in my pocket and I freak out that I dropped it somewhere because I don't actually feel it in my pocket. Also, this phone is so thin that you don't actually need to do that shimmy that you do to take out the phone out of your pocket while you're sitting down. It kind of just like slides out. It's so good. And typing on this phone, weirdly enough, is actually a whole different experience than a normal phone. It's so thin, it actually has that typing on a sheet of glass feeling. This one's really hard to explain. You have to go to like your nearest Apple store to try it out. The thinness on this phone also makes this the first iPhone that I can use as a small hand user, edge to edge. I can literally reach edge to edge. So the whole selling point of this iPhone being thin, it's my favorite thing about this iPhone. Here's some extra things that I noted that I don't actually know what to categorize them in, but this was my experience of using the iPhone. The flashlight on this phone is different. This flashlight. So on a normal iPhone, you can actually change the width of how big the flashlight you want to flash. But with this iPhone Air, you can only change the brightness of the flash. So it's most likely because they had a smaller flash in the iPhone Air. I don't think anyone actually noticed this because I didn't see any other reviewer even talk about this. The balance on this phone is actually really good for how thick the top part is. It didn't feel like it was gonna tip over because it's actually perfectly balanced in the center. Nice. And the size of this iPhone Air. So slightly bigger than the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro, but smaller than the 17 Pro Max. So you're getting 0.2 inches more than the iPhone 17 Pro. If Apple were to make the iPhone Air 2, my 2 requests would be a wide camera and a... Oh, you're good. No worries. It's for my mom. And stereo speakers, one at the top and one at the bottom. That's kind of really it. Like, there's nothing else I need for this phone. I honestly think the battery life is great. And honestly, if Apple wanted to be quirky, they could even do like a choose your own camera kind of thing. Imagine on the Apple website where you have two options, like the wide camera and the ultra wide camera, and you can choose between both options. So they will retrofit whichever camera you want. I'll go for the ultra wide camera because I am a vlogger and I do vlogging things, whatever that means. But I'm pretty sure that 90 to 95% of people who get this phone, which are not content creators, you're gonna love this phone. And like I said, I'm not doing this comparison between like, oh, is this phone the value phone or the iPhone 17? We know the iPhone 17 is the better phone. But if you are on the edge of like the phone, I guess, I don't know. But if you are someone who really appreciates technology and you appreciate the phone being so thin, it's a phone that is probably gonna remain as my main phone. When you hold this piece of technology, like a phone that literally feels like a plane of glass, and you're using it daily to play games or like surf the internet, it's really hard to go back to something that's this thick. I'll show a picture. So my final thoughts on the iPhone Air. I think it's a really good first generation product. And I honestly think it's a really underrated phone. But yeah, thank you for watching my little iPhone review. I am in Seattle. I'm gonna be going home tomorrow.